Hello to the digital women community. It's really great to be with you this afternoon. And I know you've had a full day, but hold on, because this session is going to whack the end of your day over the head with a nice, soft, delightfully smelling cushion. I have no idea where that came from, Helen, Caroline, and Shan, but you can see from their expressions, everyone, that they're not really that surprised to hear that kind of stuff coming out of my mouth this afternoon. So very excited about this session on future-proofing your career. And just a little advert for, as if this wasn't enough, straight afterwards I'll be talking about AI and new jobs for digital women. So if you can hang on a little bit longer after that, that'd be great to see you. If not, obviously you'll see it on the recording. So okay, let's crack on then. We've got about 45 minutes. We've got a lot to talk about with these very experienced and lovely women who are dying to get to know the digital women community, actually, because digital women is new to them too. So first of all, I'm going to give you the kind of vital statistics type intro for each of our speakers, and then I'm going to ask them to tell you what they really want you to understand about them as people and what they do in their work straight afterwards. But I'm going to start with Helen. Helen, hi. Helen Christopher there. So this is going to be very embarrassing, obviously, for all three of you. Well, possibly not Caroline, because she's very used to standing up and saying, hey, look at me, in a good way, by the way. So Helen, you're an award-winning global marketing manager for Verisk, who are a leading B2B software provider to insurance, and you've operated in lots of other verticals, including manufacturing. You're an internationally experienced B2B marketing leader, fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and a committed mentor in their Marketing Meet a Mentor program. So, Helen, lovely to see you.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Going to Shan. So, Shan, you've got 16 plus years in global program and change management experience in various industries, and that includes financial services, IT, fast-moving consumer goods, and retail. And you've worked on enormous global brands like Johnny Walker, Smirnoff, Guinness. Alcohol a running theme there, Shan. That might be something we might want to talk about a bit later. And you've managed teams on pretty much every continent. I think it was just Australasia that I was missing, but I wait to stand to be corrected. You specialize in creating and driving strategy, digital innovation, IT, business transformation, and a lot more. So welcome, Shan. Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
And Caroline Bedford is an award-winning corporate leader, aren't you, Caroline? And you're most recently the founder of a brand new business called EDI, which stands for Educate, Develop, Innovate and Inspire. And it's a new education and innovation company built for regulated markets. I was going to say financial services, but there are other regulated markets as well, Caroline, so I won't add that qualifier. So your career has included highly successful business development consultancy and tech training, and you are qualified up to the hilt, I learned. I mean, I already knew you were brilliant, Caroline, but this woman has pretty much every qualification going in change management, project management, and more. So welcome to you, Caroline, and welcome to all three of you.
Thank you, Sean, and hello to everybody online. We can't see you, but it's great to know that you're there.
Good, great. So as I said, I've just kind of given people what they would see if they went onto your amazing LinkedIn profiles, all three of you. So let's kick off. Right, the first thing I think is always really interesting to know what's behind the job title. What's behind what we can see from that method of storytelling, and what you think it's really important for the community to understand and know about you as a digital woman in your own right. And Shan, I'm going to come to you first. Kick off, please.
Yes. So firstly, I studied archaeology and history, so I'm probably the last person you would expect to find in digital, and sort of might have kind of collapsed into this by mistake, but absolutely love it. And my world at the moment, interestingly enough, you spoke about alcohol. I think one of my life goals is to work in sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And we currently have a sexual welfare company as one of our clients, and we have a radio company as another one. So I've covered the sex and the rock and roll, and I've worked for a company that used to sell cannabis. So there you go, all legally, obviously. So I've made the trifecta. But I'm just as an individual, I'm responsible for a club, which is what we call them in And Digital. And essentially that's a business unit of people, and the buck stops with me. So how we work with our clients, how we work with each other, and how commercially successful we can be is what I do as part of my day job. And my mantra is, as long as your people are happy, they will make your clients happy, and the revenue will take care of itself. So that's me in a nutshell.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much. Caroline, coming to you then. Beautiful shirt, as always.
Well, firstly, I love a bit of colour, as you can tell. Secondly, I don't have any contraband in my background like Shan. I've been working, as Shan said earlier, in regulated markets, predominantly the financial services industry, since I left school back in the day. So I first started in the London insurance market in 1988, the time for big shoulder pads, etc. But I don't think I've ever quite got over them, to be honest. And so I've been working in that sector for over 30 years. And I have had what I consider to be a really varied and enjoyable career. Midway through, I had my 2 children, so I took time out, sort of late 90s, early 2000s, to have my children, which are now 20, who are now 20 and 17. And I went through that crisis of confidence after having children, with how will I go back into the marketplace? Will there still be a job for me? Will I be relevant? Fortunately, I chose really well with my partner, my husband, because he encouraged me to put my money where my mouth was. And I was able to get back into the workplace. It wasn't straightforward. Really happy to answer questions about that. Ultimately, I have worked in technology for my entire career, and only over the last 5 or 6 years would I say it's become my absolute passion. I am now, as Shân said, I've recently created my own organization, which is called EDDI, which is all about innovation and immersive behavioral change that supports digital skills. And that's why I'm really delighted to be on this particular panel, because I think, as we'll talk in a little while, digitization has become very closely linked with behavior and culture, and that's what really drives me. So really happy to be here, and really happy to share many of my thoughts on that subject as we go through the session.
Thanks so much, darling. Thanks very much indeed. Helen, what's the real Helen? Helen?
Oh, well, my early career wasn't exactly brilliant, which is why I kind of advocate for younger marketeers and younger ladies. And I have to say that's what changed and grew me. I actually started off, I was going to be a social worker, and then had a complete change of career. And I was a single mom at the time. And probably one of the things I'm proudest of was actually getting qualified when I was in my mid-20s, still working full time. And at that point, I promised myself that if ever I was going to get anywhere, that I would advocate supporting other women in marketing to sort of empower and fuel their careers. Now, I could get all geeky about marketing. I absolutely love it, live and breathe it. And I feel very fortunate that my career has landed me at Verisk, and it's, yes, we help our customers to make crucial decisions around risk and investment and operations. And you touched on the fact that I've worked in manufacturing, and a lot of people would probably say that my career choices have been dull, but I find them fascinating. And I've gravitated towards tech companies and the digital side as well. You know, I remember the days when, you know, you put videos into machines and snail mail, you know, and you get pieces of paper and put it into envelopes, and that was your targeted marketing. So I've seen the rise of what digital marketing can do in the early days, and I find that extremely powerful and exciting. So
Thank you so much.
Lovely to
Thank you.
meet all the ladies.
Well, you've found out a little bit more about the real women behind the amazing job titles and LinkedIn profiles, which is always important, I think, especially when we're going to be talking about something as important and potentially tricky as future-proofing your career, which is what this session is obviously all about. So I want to kick off then by asking you, let's have a conversation about what does future-proofing really mean for you personally, but how are you doing that? So looking at your own life and into the future, and I'm really interested as an individual, actually, for you to know, Caroline, are you still there? I can't see you. Are you still there? Lucy, we seem to have lost Caroline. If you wouldn't mind just checking that she's okay. But let's carry on with the future that you can see, that you're sort of looking towards, what you see in that future, how you're going about understanding it, and trying to work out what that future proofing actually means. So Shân, if I can come back to you again, I was going to go to Caroline, but we seem to have lost her at the moment. I'm sure we'll get her back, but from your point of view then, future proofing means what, and proofing, and against what kind of futures?
Yeah, good question, and I apologize because there's a knock 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 sound in the background. One cannot ever control everything, I'm afraid. So from my perspective, when you look at your career as an individual, and when I look at the people around me, the most important thing is that you're doing something that you absolutely love. And I think of the Japanese concept of ikigai, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but essentially there are 4 elements to that. One is do what you're good at. The second is, are you doing what you're passionate about? The third one is, are you getting paid? And the fourth one, are you doing good for the world? Now, we can't always tick all of those, but your ikigai is coming together and ensuring that you're driving towards that. So when I think of future-proofing my career, I really think about what is it that I really enjoy doing, and what am I good at, and how can I get better at that? And how can I thrive? Where's the right environment for me where I can really work at those skills and thrive, and where people can challenge me, and where I can grow? For me, it's really, really important to be able to grow. Now, obviously, if you're starting off in your career, sometimes you don't have a clue. Sometimes you think you like something and you land up not liking something. And that's all great, because the whole point is you need to learn along the way. I had a discussion previously with Helen and Shân and Caroline, and mentioning the fact that there often have been times where I've perhaps stayed in a company for too long, because I've been too nervous or scared to move, and actually it hasn't been the right place for me. So for me, what's really critical is understanding what really makes you excited. So for me, it's obviously digital, but it's also people. And as long as I'm working with people and I'm helping people to grow and thrive, and really helping them to be good at what they want to do, and looking at all their, I call them super strengths, and I do the sort of the pose, that for me is absolutely the key. And when I look at my future, I'm privileged in the sense that I've got to a place in my career where if I move, I make that decision. And when I move, I choose who I move to. I chose And Digital for very specific reasons. It's a great company to work for, and it enables me to be who I want to be and be my authentic self. So for all of you working together, I think it's, if I think of all the people that are on this call, if you're at the beginning of your career or you're growing your career, always think about that. What is it about for me and my skills, and how can I learn and grow? So that's really what future-proofing career means to me.
Okay, that's really interesting. I just want to ask a question about the practicalities of that, because you touched on one set of practicalities, which is what if you don't know, and also this issue of confidence in your own judgment as well, Shân. I mean, I know that's something that I'm quite old. I mean, well, I love you dearly, but we are in our 50s, late 40s, 50s, right? So if we're not feeling confident at this point, maybe there's a deeper conversation that needs to happen offline, right? But I guess the point I'm making is is it possible to take that approach? How is it possible to take that approach if you are at the very beginning of your career and you're also young? Because you can start new careers obviously at different points in your life, but those practicalities around, well, how do I know, how do I build confidence in my own judgment, and what trade-offs do I make between needing to earn money to have somewhere to live and making those kinds of discrete choices that you were talking about, Shân, which, you know, obviously are all about self-expression and being the real you. But what if you don't know who the real you is?
Good question. So for me, the essential element really is having a support network. And I think that's something that all of us maybe in our early careers didn't necessarily have. But I think now, with the emphasis specifically on women and ensuring that we get more women in particular into digital, that it's become a lot more prevalent. So who do you have around you? Who can you find in your organization that's more senior to you? Who can you find that you've connected with at an event? On LinkedIn, there's sort of various different ways that you can connect in with people, that you can have a network of people that support you, people that you can, that understand where you where you are in your life and what you're trying to achieve. And even if you're not really sure and you're just dipping your toe into digital and you're thinking, let me try this, and you absolutely love it or you'll absolutely hate it, it's having people around you that you can have those conversations with, finding the right mentors, and even your peers. You know, I find it really useful at And Digital. We have a lot of very young people that work here, and what absolutely startles me every day is how much I can learn from them, and how prepared people are to if you give them the right environment, to be able to ask those questions. And I think that's probably the key. There are going to be some shitty, crappy jobs, and you might land up in one of those environments that's not great. And it's difficult for you to ask those questions and know what to do. And then for me, it's start looking for something else. It might not be the physical work you're doing, it's actually the environment. Does that answer your question,
Okay.
or am I being a bit wishy-washy?
It begins, I mean, it certainly opens up the whole area, doesn't it? And hopefully, you know, the guys listening in, guys and girls listening in, I use guys in the American sense, genderless originally, okay? So before people get annoyed with me. But do ask the questions. I know situations like this when people say, do put your questions in the chat, we do really mean it. And also just to say that each of these three women has offered to be in contact with individuals who'd like more information either on them or on the businesses that they work in at the moment and whether or not they're hiring, and more of that information later. So Carol, I'm really glad to have you back, darling.
Yes, apologies for the power cut, actually. There are
well, do you know, digital women, Stuart posted on LinkedIn earlier today that they've had their own power cut. So goodness knows, it's one of those things. But Caroline, what we're talking about at the moment is that question of, what does future proofing mean for you personally as a starting point? And what's the proofing look like? And also just interested in what kinds of futures you're actually sort of thinking about proofing yourself for in your career.
Well, it's a great question, isn't it? And I just caught Shann's the last part of Shann's response to it. And for me, future proofing has always meant taking responsibility for your own path. And I don't think that has changed for me throughout my entire career in actual fact. Taking responsibility doesn't mean doing everything by yourself, but it means not waiting for things to happen or being passive. And that's something that I have always focused on throughout my entire career. I've got a little motto that I've sort of followed throughout the years, and it's, if somebody offers you an opportunity that you want, say yes, and then figure out how to do it afterwards. And that's something I've sort of tried to live by throughout my career, because I'm certainly no different than many of us in that if I'm asked to do something that makes me anxious or worried, then I like to focus on the thing that I think I can't do, rather than the 90% that I feel that I could. But I have given myself permission to take on the challenge and then figure out how to bring people in around me who can help me. And I think that's one of the things that makes me feel more confident for the future and my career for the future. You mentioned, Shân, that we're over 50. We're really fortunate, I think, to have been able to build our careers at a time when things were slightly more stable, when there was more historic knowledge of what you could expect. So there's pros and cons, of course, but I think now that there is a big challenge, because the future of work, the style of work, the way that that's going to manifest itself, it's not super clear right now. So if you're a planner, or if you're somebody who likes to be able to do a 5-year plan, I think that's going to be tough right now. And I feel that the way to make yourself feel comfortable and slightly more protected is to be open-minded and to be more agile. And one of the things that I used to love doing was to be a bit of a perfectionist and get everything done to the absolute best of my ability before I passed it on. And now with my team, our motto, I'm not sure whether this is a good thing to share, but our motto is good enough. It's good enough. Get it out there. We'll iterate. We'll change it. Do not wait for perfection, because by the time we finish it, the world will have moved on. Mm-hmm. And so for me, future-proofing is taking responsibility, building your network. And the phrase that we talked about before was, don't wait till you need it to build a network. Build it straight away. Doesn't have to be perfect. And I'll always also say, don't be that friend who only contacts you when you want something. We've all got a friend who only WhatsApps us when such a time as they want a favour. Don't be that person, because none of us feel fondly about them. Contact people, offer help, be in touch, build your network so that you have support around you and you can draw on it when you need to.
Fantastic. Some great top tips and lovely candor as always, Caroline. And I think, that point about, is it possible actually to truly future-proof in today's world? I think that's a really important point. And as you say, slings and arrows, pros and cons about being born in the late 60s and growing up in the world of work in the 70s, 80s, well, 80s, 90s, and 2000s, because I'm sure we've all experienced Me Too moments, right? I'm not being flippant about it. So definitely pros and cons, but yeah, that stability, that's something I hadn't thought about like that in that way before. Caroline, Helen, coming to you then, when you think about this question of what is the proofing, what does that look like for you personally, and for what kinds of futures? Where does your thinking take you? I mean, we've already seen from what you said about how you actually, decided I'm going to be a marketer, and you worked and paid to get qualified. Difficult to do, and showing lots of guts and agility, all the words that we use now for personal resilience. But how does that now look from where you're sitting, Helen? And what, as I say, what kinds of futures are you thinking about as you look forward, if you're looking forward?
I think you never stop growing, do you? You've got to. Not all career paths are linear, and to Caroline's point, you've got to be open. Even when you're invited to do a panel discussion, I was laughing and saying to the ladies, it's about kind of working on your personal brand as well. And I almost view it, public speaking, like fitness. I don't relish the thought in doing it, but I know it's good for my profile. I think it's good to meet new people, and even in this era. So it's working on your personal brand, which is an ongoing thing. And to what you were saying about the networking side, absolutely, because it's about serendipity to me. And if I think back to what I was doing in my early career, when people say, well, we want people who are qualified and we want experience, which is very difficult to do when you're younger. So I got stuck into a few organisations, like there's one called Pimp My Cause, and it was brilliant. It's like lawyers doing pro bono work, but for marketeers. And that was really enriching for me, because it made me more three-dimensional to get involved in things like the Chartered Institute of Marketing and other associations outside of my organisation, my paid job, to learn more, to meet more, and actually bringing those skills into the role. And that's something I continue to do. I still work closely with the the Worshipful Company of Marketers, who are a livery company in the city. We make some fantastic people there, and absolutely brilliant. And it's something I enjoy. And I think that's the thing, is when you do get older and you know what you like, what you don't like. And I think it's okay to say, do you know what? I'm going to have fun as well. And why not? And so I think, yeah, that's all part of your personal brand and getting stuck into things that perhaps you wouldn't normally be. And I also think as well is working very hard on your personal brand. So you do have to put yourself out there, and including, well, we're in a digital community here, and I think tomorrow, I've looked at the agenda and there's some fantastic people talking about, you know, how to embrace your LinkedIn profile and things like that. There are so many tools nowadays to bolster that.
Yeah.
And
I'm really glad. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, obviously, being a marketing geek, I think it's almost, you have to look at it like your own personal brand is, what's your vision? Because I'd never have thought 20 odd years ago I'd perhaps be where I am now. I know what I wanted to be, and then you have to put steps in place like you would a marketing plan, don't you? You need to position yourself before you know where you want to go. You need to know, what do I want? How am I going to get there? And then monitoring and tracking that along the way, and am I getting to where I need to be? So I'm making it sound very simple, but
Helen, I think you picked up on some really good point there, actually, about looking for opportunities anywhere. And I think that is so true, especially in a digital world, because back in the day, you used to sort of specialize in a sector, and your domain expertise would be what makes you potentially special. I find now you can get techniques and tips and ideas from all different sectors, because sometimes the processes are very similar and they can open up your own mind to something that you can try. For example, I have a friend who runs a digital community for carers who want to potentially get back into work. And you know, at first I thought, well, that's not my audience, that's not necessarily who I'm focusing on. But then I thought about how she was driving the communication and trying to understand the needs and the wants and what people would gain from it. I realized that I could translate a lot of the digital criteria that she was using into my audience, and I was able to pick her brains, and she gave me so much support that I didn't necessarily go to look for. And now I realize that perhaps I can find this information in many areas that I wasn't expecting.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
So some really great some tips and strands coming out here, right, around that open-mindedness and getting learning and inspiration from outside your own bubble, for example. That value of authentic value of, you know, having networks or communities or friends who really get you, whether that's from a personal basis, but also from you in your working life as well. It's massively supportive, isn't it? And I think, you know, you talked about the planning approach, Helen, and just touching on what you were talking about, Shân, when we were talking about, you know, what future proofing means for you. And it would be great, actually. I'd like to spell Ichiban, was it? Not Ichiku Park, Ichiban, was it?
Ikigai. So
Ichikai. Why did Ichiban is probably some kind of irritating brand of bun, isn't it? Ichikai. I'm going to put that there.
It's IK. Do you want me to spell it in the chat? I'll spell it in the chat. Okay,
yeah.
Sorry.
John, she's going to tell you. So
we put it in the chat. Yes, I don't have to take. Yes, that's technology, isn't it, Caroline? So just the point I wanted to make, I suppose, is that planning can take lots of different shapes, can't it? And it's according to what's important to you. Yeah. It may be a marketing plan type approach if that's what you know how to do and that feels right. It could equally be those 4 areas that you talked about. You know, what do I love? What can I do? What am I going to get paid for? Where's my growth? And Caroline, you're talking also about what can I learn from other people, and I want to take responsibility for myself. So what does that actually look like? So I think there's lots of different flavors there, isn't there? It's not necessarily just for the planners amongst us. It's a way of thinking, perhaps, around what's important to you. And maybe that's the key, the strand that unites all of them. It's about, this is your life. This is, you know, it may not feel like it, but you do have more choices than you may think. And at the very least, you just need to try and get clear with yourself about what's important to you at any one point in time, knowing, as you said, Caroline, you know, that the world is, I heard a new phrase today, liquid, which means what the hell's going on at any one point in time, right?
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you think it's fluid, which is absolutely true, I think. If you look at how comfortable we are now with journeys and planning journeys, most of us now would quite happily put our destination into Google Maps and have a rough idea of the direction that we're going in. But if Google Maps tells us that the road's closed and we need to go a different way, that's what we would do. And I think that translates to your career as well. Have an indication of where you're going, but take shortcuts or obstacles or diversions if they're going to add value.
So many of the women of the digital women community are working in corporates and other people's businesses, but many of them are actually running their own businesses. So I've come late to founding. I was a great entrepreneur, but I didn't start to be an entrepreneur until I was mid-40s, right? Caroline, I guess that's the same for you, right? With Eddie. Shân, entrepreneur, where is that balance for you at the moment?
So currently I work for a company. I've always worked for companies, but I have gone between being a permanent employee or being a consultant to the company, where I've sort of owned my own company, but not in the real sense, not like essentially what Caroline's doing. I haven't forged this amazing path that she's now about to forge. So yeah, I've done both, and it's actually quite interesting because, again, I suppose it's about you as an individual and your sort of personality type. So I would say that for someone who's worked largely in financial services organizations, probably not the kind of person you would expect to work in financial services organizations. I always have a picture of what's called the Purple Rain March in South Africa, which is from in the 80s, where we were marching against apartheid, and they used purple dye to find you basically 2 days later, and they, by mistake, it was very windy in Cape Town, and the purple dye went all over the buildings. It was absolutely spectacular. Wow. But if you think of that person, if you think of the person that was a very, very passionate anti-apartheid activist, and then you put them into a financial services corporate company, they probably don't fit very well. So I think that, again, these are things you find out along your career, and to what Caroline said and about Google Maps, it's so true. You might stop completely and go back in the opposite direction, and that's okay. It's not really thinking I have to have the answer now. So I have stopped asking people, where do you want to be in 5 years time or 2 years time? I think especially if you're young, there's so many opportunities and changes that can happen in your world that would, you know, COVID has taught us that, hasn't it? I mean, literally in one flash. So yeah,
that's really interesting, actually, and I'd like to take a couple of minutes to talk about you as people who will be setting the tone, at least, acquiring talent, or trying to retain talent as well. Both those, you know, the independent entrepreneurs that we have who want to provide you with all the services that you're going to find out more about tomorrow, Helen, in day 2, and loads more as well. But also people who want to have that experience of working in a company. So Helen, I'm going to come to you first. You know, those questions, the kinds of questions that you would be asking in a do you want to come and work with me in my company, and actually, is this the right company for you? What are those kinds of questions, and what are the kinds of skills that you're looking for in digital women, whatever that looks like now?
I think at the core, it has to be around the customer. You've got to really care and want to do the best for the customer, whatever the role, marketing and otherwise, and being customer centric. And then around that, you've got your technical skills, so whether it's data analytics or digital marketing, risk, whatever. But I think those skills can be learned, but it's the behavioural side of it. High emotional intelligence. Are you collaborative? Do you have the right attitude? And I think those are often the harder things to find, because you can't change someone's makeup, can you? So, you know, side by side, you can have some fantastic candidates, and I don't think you're ever going to get a perfect 100% with all of them, but I'd take someone with the right attitude over, say, someone with just all the technical skills, because if they're the right person, then you can invest in them to learn those skills.
So is there one, sorry darling, is there one sort of killer indicator question that you use? I mean, it did used to be, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? And for all I know, that could still be one of the killer attitude questions that people use. But do you have such a question, Helen, where you think, whatever the answer is, the response to this question is something that tells me a huge amount about that person's mindset? Is there one or not?
I think this is a really stock question, but like, you know, how would you describe yourself in 3 words? Now, I could tell you about some of the hilarious answers I've had. Really, like, it's meant to be positive. It's meant to be a positive affirmation of who you are, but because that leaves it open enough that people can interpret it how they want, and how the answer is still very personable, isn't it? But I like that question, because I think that gives, like, the answers give you a really good feel about who the person is.
Now, Caroline, thank you, Helen. Caroline, your question isn't, do you know the words to Pina Colada, or whatever that song's called, is it? I know you do. But if you're looking for people to work in your business, would that be on your list of questions?
No, it wouldn't. No, it definitely wouldn't. But what would? So I want, Helen touched on having a persona, a personal brand, if you like. So, you know, brand can often be perceived as being, I'm going to say fake, and I don't mean it like that, but developed and crafted. So I think that having a personal persona or profile that is authentic is really important. That's the dog behind me, by the way. I'm trying to bury my way out of here, so apologies for that. But I run an innovation business, and a lot of that is about building relationships between the team and the customer base, and understanding who the customer base is. So I want to be able to see a social media history. I want to be able to see that person talking about relevant subjects on LinkedIn and business pages. Just annoying. So for me, it's really important that the people who are in my team are visible in the right way, and talking about the topics that are relevant to me in the right way. And when I speak to people about new roles, I want to see that they have authenticity. I want to see that they are agile. I want to see that they are adaptable. And I also want to see that they have got a social responsibility, because that's something that's really important in my, not just in my business, but to my client base as well. So if people have got activities and involvement in socially responsible projects beyond what they do for a day job, then that's always something that I'm very interested to hear about.
Right, thank you. Shan, so when you're looking for people, which I know you are constantly, because of the way that digital is growing, right?
Yeah.
So what's your, I don't want to use the word formula, but the questions, your indicators, what are you looking for, and how do you test that what you're seeing is what you think you need?
Yeah, so I think we have 2 different interviews that you go through for, and one is a cultural interview, and then one is more technical. I think depending on the role and the seniority of the role determines the level of technical prowess you might need to have. So if you're really young and you want to join and digital as an associate, it's really important that we don't just go, oh, well, tech, you need to have a degree in computing, or tech, you need to do this. So from a sort of more from a skills perspective, I'm looking for people that have, even if they've just done a Code First Girls course, or have looked to pivot their career and have, you know, gone off and tried to build websites or learn coding, or from an analyst perspective, because we hire analysts, we hire designers and all sorts of things. So it's not just, there's not a one size fits all formula in terms of who you are as an individual. And then our cultural interviews very much to figure out whether you would fit into, and on a number of different levels. One, we want to make sure that you are the kind of colleague, and we very much see ourselves as a community. And we want to make sure that you're going to fit into that community, and two, that you're going to be comfortable working with clients, because obviously that is something that you're going to have to do. But we recognize the fact, I think the important thing for me is that I recognize that you need diversity, and you need to create the right environment for people to thrive. So within an interview, if someone you sort of have to be really careful, because if someone is autistic and thinks and operates differently potentially to kind of me, who's kind of out there and all over the place, I want to be cognizant of that fact, and I want to be able to enable them to thrive as much as someone that might be more like me. So my biggest thing when I hire is that I mustn't hire loads of Shans, because that is a very easy thing to do, where you hire someone that's like you, and you bond with them, and you bring unconscious bias into the whole equation. So there are a number of things we ask. One of the questions I really like is the question about what is the best feedback you've ever received, and what kind of impact did it make on you, and what did that mean? And I think that's quite good, because it gives you a sense of, and that feedback could have been at university. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you were in the role, but it gives you a really good sense of what they value and how they learn. Because at the end of the day, I want people that want to learn, and that's what I want to get out of my cultural interview.
Thank you.
So,
thank you. So 45 minutes just went like nothing, didn't it, really? So we're coming to the end of the session now, Digital Women Community. So I'm going to slightly spring something on our panelists, but I know they're more than up to it. So let's go back to what Helen was saying about describe yourself in 3 words. And I want you to do that, and I want you to do it through the lens of your attitude to future-proofing your career. And whilst I'm just going to give you 2 seconds to think about it, and I'm going to come to Helen first, right? And whilst you're doing that, I just wanted to say that last section where we were talking about, the guys were talking about their attitude to recruiting culturally and technically. I think there's some really good top tips in there for all of you that are needing to bring new people into your teams, or have existing people there as part of your scaling. Because again, the Digital Women community is full of entrepreneurs busy scaling, as well as digital women who want to work in firms. So on that note then, Helen, 3 words to describe your approach to future-proofing your career.
Passionate, curious, innovative.
Okay, Shân.
I'm going to passionate, have to have that, empathetic, and strategic.
Oh, they're also good. Caroline.
Well, I'm going to have to cross some off my list, because you've already said them again. So in regard to future-proofing and my future career, then I would say indefatigable. That's a good word, isn't it?
It's a very good word.
I want to be courageous and powerful.
Just some great adjectives. Thank you so much. It's been a massive pleasure. I think we could have carried on for a lot longer, but I have to say goodbye for now. So Caroline, thank you so much. Shân, thank you so much. And Helen, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing all of you again very soon.